It's an interesting move, but it's more a question of differing views on how the oil fund should be governed, rather than differing views about Israel. I think most Norwegian politicians are very critical of how the war is being prosecuted, but there's a difference in how they view the operation of the sovereign wealth fund. So what's happened now is that the normal mechanism for these things to happen takes a lot of time. So someone says there's a problem with a company, and then there's a process, and then there's a result. But in this instance, it was very hotly contested. This must happen now. Why hasn't this happened before? And then some people fear that, well, this might mean that the sovereign wealth fund might become more politicized, because that's the big fear in Norway, that this is going to be a politicized thing.
So who really will be affected here? I mean, will it have an impact on Israel's economy?
No, it won't have an impact on Israel's economy, not in its own, and no, I don't think it will. So what happens now is that Norway has divested from 11 Israeli companies that we believe are somehow connected with the prosecution of the war. They sell weapons to IDF or sell equipment of some sort, that kind of stuff. So the only way this is going to have an impact is if these kinds of guidelines will be coordinated across all Western and other nations as some sort of political sanction regime. But that's not what this is. This is more about where Norwegians feel that we are comfortable investing.
So talking a little bit more about that investor discomfort, where else does the fund have investments that might be problematic according to these ethical guidelines?
Well, I mean, that's you're cutting to the core of the issue, really, because people have all different kinds of personal ethics, right? So there might be a lot of companies that some people don't want to invest in. They're really uncomfortable. But we're one nation. We have to have a common set of rules. There are other places where we don't invest. So Russia, we don't invest, but that's because there was a coordinated sanction regime, right? And then there are also companies that have been excluded on these grounds, and some are sort of pre-excluded. Any companies that deal with tobacco or nuclear weapons or these sorts of things have been excluded by definition. But there is also a lot of gray zones, because you have companies that they sell cameras that can be used in drones and in hospitals. Things can be used for medicine and for war. And how do you judge that? That's why we have this ethical council. Yeah. And there are a lot of gray areas in these. When you deal with big multinational corporations, there are a lot of gray areas. So in this case, as you know from all European countries, the public discussion about the war in Israel and Gaza is very heated. So that's why this now became a very hotly contested issue.